Welcome, everybody, today to the EnlightenMANt podcast, where I experience art that tackles subject matter that I am not familiar with, so as to further my knowledge and gain insight to problems that aren't related to straight white men like myself. Thus the name EnlightenMANt, because I am a man trying to be enlightened by art that I am not really familiar with. Hello, my name is Hayden Titler, and today our choice of text is Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place, published in 1988. Now, folks, you know at this point that I like to start off every podcast by addressing our new listeners, and I just like to get this out of the way really quick. I do have ideas about what the text is about, and I do try to understand the issues that are facing oppressed groups, but I will never ever in any way, shape, or form state that I understand what the troubles actually feel like to a group that has been oppressed or discriminated against if I'm not in that group myself, if that makes sense. The point of this podcast is just to gain different perspectives so that I am more knowledgeable about different things going on in the world that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. And I think in this novel, it really stands to illustrate the reasons why some people may not know about different things that are happening in the world, or colonization, or things of that sort. But I'm getting ahead of myself. With that out of the way, let's jump into the book. Now, the first thing that I kind of wanted to get into is about after I was done reading the book. The first thing that kind of came into my head that was a recurring aspect of the book itself was this sense of frustration from the author, Jamaica Kincaid. I think it's a large part of why this book was written, and I think it shows through the text itself. Kincaid constructs a narrative that, ironically deconstructs the reason her home country of Antigua isn't what it used to be. Kincaid's hostility towards the British is shown when she argues that the colonization of Antigua makes it into something that it isn't, almost throwing away its original identity, if you want to use that as a term. Kincaid frequently highlights throughout the novel that the nation's priority is solely on tourism and foreign businesses, while it just ignores all of the locals' needs for things like general facilities and job markets that are acclimated to these locals. And I think that Kincaid is kind of right in her anger. What if your country was just absolutely colonized and you felt like your identity was just going away? I feel like that's something that not a lot of people can relate to. So I'm really glad that this podcast lets me kind of explore different aspects or perspectives in life, so that I can kind of grasp what like certain things that are wrong with the world, such as colonization, which I am heavily against and didn't really know much about before this. So I'm really, really glad that I got the opportunity to read this. But before we go any further, I am going to pass it over to my assistant Todd for today's ad reads. Todd?
Hello, everybody. My name's Todd, and I'm Hayden's assistant. It's that time of the podcast where I'd like to take the time to thank our sponsors for today. Seems that our only sponsor for today is Dan Cava Toyota. Dan Cava Toyota. Their vehicles are top of the line and are some of the best that Japanese manufacturers of cars can do. So, head on down to Dan Cava Toyota to get deals so good you think they're corrupt. It's a little weird for a tagline, but go ahead and head on down to Dan Cava.
Yeah, no, Todd, that was really weird, but hey, they pay the bills, huh? They keep me and you going. But yeah, what was I talking about before again? The frustration that kind of seeps throughout the book. The frustration that Kincaid feels is just so poignant. It's really hard not to sympathize with her, even if her bias and hostility is mostly at an all-time high. The novel's genre of creative nonfiction, it really lends the advantage of placing the reader in a real-world location and guiding them through real world troubles that Antigua faces. And I think that putting the reader in the position of this tourist really makes it to where you can understand how somebody could be so oblivious as a tourist to these things happening. I mean, to them, it's just you're going and seeing a pretty world. You're putting some money into the economy. It seems like a great idea at first, but I mean, as Kincaid explains, these tourists are bad people, and I don't mean that they're bad people in a sense that they're bad like outside of being a tourist, but when they are being a tourist, they are actively damaging the community of the country that they're visiting, especially if it's a country such as Antigua, that's heavily colonized at this point. And what I mean there is that the country of Antigua, at the point in the story that the novel takes place, actually isn't, it's not colonized anymore. It's actually neo-colonized, which deals more in tourism and global trade more than colonialism did, which is more of political control and violent assertiveness. But in this neo-colonial world that Kincaid shows, it's more, it's a little more complicated, if that's the word to use. It's more subtle, that the area is being actively destroyed, of its own identity. And while I have the time, I think I would like to say that I think that while I'm discussing this text with you all, that it's important to realize that the context in which the story takes place. Doing a little bit of research and finding out the historical context, it can help you situate the text so that you better understand the troubles at the time of writing, even if the problems are still relevant today. But getting past that, I would like to say that placing the reader as a thoughtless tourist in this first section really sets the stage for Kincaid to rip apart this tourist industry and the Antiguan government as a whole for being nothing but corrupt and incompetent. She cites early on that there's a hospital that was damaged in an earthquake, yet it hasn't been fixed for over a decade. And I think this is a glaring issue that the novel presents, that the Antiguan government really doesn't care about the well-being of the locals. It really wants to make money from the outside. And as for the tourism side of things, which connects to that, Kincaid clearly expresses that tourists are bad people, like I mentioned before. She also says that touring a foreign location such as Antigua, it hurts the locals from the places that they visit in the long run. Not only that, but tourism is kind of disrespectful in most senses, because it allows the tourists to kind of gaze in amazement at the local scenery and make it seem like the people of the country are zoo animals. The culture in Antigua is not the same as in Britain or America, so this being highlighted by Kincaid feels good to wrap my head around. And this being because I am actually guilty of tourism. After last year, I went on a trip to Zimbabwe. I don't really want to contribute to this type of system anymore. And while I was oblivious to my actions, it now dawns on me that I was treating the locals like they were some type of time capsule. I mean, I treated them with respect and everything, but I would ask them questions, and from my perspective, I'm just trying to gain insight and knowledge. But from their perspective, it kind of seems like I'm intruding on their culture that they hold dear to them. So when I go in there and I don't know, I feel like I acted like I was kind of a part of them, which I feel really bad about now. But I think that's the great part about this novel, is that it kind of teaches me that I was wrong in that moment and that I can be better forward. Um, but in reality, they lived like I did. We just had different experiences and different values, which I mean I see now is it's completely okay. And although I saw it as okay before, I kind of realize now that I shouldn't have taken their experiences and values as some sort of alternate reality. Like it's so crazy that maybe they don't value the mighty dollar like I do. And I think that's a really really powerful point that this book makes, is that it kind of highlights that just because different cultures can exist doesn't mean that one culture is better than the other, even if they are a little more undeveloped by our society standards. So I think that's a really cool aspect of the book. But to kind of cap things off, I think that this book really captures how Kincaid was feeling at the time of writing it. The frustration and annoyment that she feels. I mean, annoyment. I don't even know if that's a word, but I feel like that she feels that the colonization and product of neo-colonizing of Antigua is just downright wrong. And I think that the fact that she can see it so clearly and others can't is the most frustrating part. And I gotta say, being somebody that isn't even in that situation, it really feels frustrating to me too. It feels so obvious that different cultures should be able to retain the things that make them special, but I mean, examples of Antigua, and it just makes you think that there's definitely other places that are being subjected to this kind of rule from the kind of Western ideologies that have taken over gradually over the years. Not even just because of the actual like beginning colonization that was happening during the 1800s, but more so this more neo-colonization that is a little bit more subtle, I would say. But yeah, it definitely brings to my attention how incredibly annoying that is, and I think that is one of the biggest strengths that the book has. It's more grounded in reality that way. It makes it more personal that something of Kincaid's is being taken, and you don't want something that's yours taken away. And I think that writing this book is the probably one of the only options that Kincaid had, which is good because I mean it became a big success, obviously, but I mean if it didn't become a success, it makes you kind of think of what would happen. I mean, it's still happening today, but I think she did a good job at kind of throwing her ideas out there so that they would stick. And if a couple more people found out about this terrifying and kind of soul crushing like process, I think that that's a success, no matter how you spin it. So this book is a big triumph in my eyes. Now, if you were coming to this podcast to try to see if I will give a review to a certain text or different project I'm looking at, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is to give knowledge to people that wouldn't priorly that wouldn't have previously had it. Sorry guys, it's Monday for me here, so my tongue's slipping a little bit. But yeah, I will not be giving this a score as always. Just the benefit that I have learned more than I did before I read it, and I'm so glad that I read it. And I hope that even if I spoiled some aspects of the book for you, it's a short read. It's only here. Let me see here. It's only like what, a little over 73 pages long, which is it's a very quick read, and I would 100% recommend it because it gave me insight about things in my own life that I need to reconcile and change for the future, so that I can make this world a better place. So with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next podcast. EnlightenMANt out.